Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Crooker, Director of Event Content at VMware, and I am honored to introduce you to Olga Specjalska. Before I do the formal introduction, I just wanted to remind everybody as they join that all questions are being taken for Olga via the Whova app, and specifically the Q&A tab in the Whova app. Also, we'd love for you to rate the session before you leave. One, that'll enter you into a raffle for some great prizes. And two, it'll give Olga the feedback that I'm sure she's interested in getting. So with that, I'd like to just introduce you to Olga and give you a little bit of background on her, and that her curiosity and love for learning has led her career across many countries, cultures, and professions. In fact, this is her first day on a totally new job. Today, she's going to share with us a few insights from her journey. So with that, welcome, Olga.
Thank you, Alison. Or another name for my presentation than what you see on the screen could be the 3 things that brought me where I am today. This is a picture of the view from my hotel room in Tokyo after I just arrived there. I was sitting in that room looking at the skyline, and I remember thinking, wow, this was going to be my home for the next few years, wondering how it was going to treat me. I had people really excited for me at that time, and I had people who were actually advising me against that move. I remember that evening I just hung up from a call with my mom, and she sounded really concerned. It really felt like with this move, I reached her capacity to comprehend my curiosity, the desire for unknown, the diversity and adventure, and even the motorbike trip that I did in Mongolia earlier that year. It was much easier to relate to than my move to Japan. Ultimately, what it was for me was that opportunity presented itself, and I decided to seize it. I went to sleep that night thinking, wow, there were only 2 ways in which this story was going to unfold. It was either going to be a great success or a big failure. Well, regardless, it would be a greatest learning experience aligned exactly to where my compass was pointing me. And that was all that mattered at that time. So how did I get there? That journey had started a few years earlier with a quote, actually. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. I can't believe that I'm starting this presentation with a quote from Alice in the Wonderland. And yet I am, because when I started as a new grad at VMware, that quote was the best gift I have ever received from one of my first managers. He insisted that I told him where I wanted to be at the end of my professional journey. And I can tell you now, it was really scary. It was huge, and it was really intimidating. And yet he made me do this, because if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And once you know that destination, when you know it, when you feel it, where you want to go, when you know that true north, oh woman, the journey gets very exciting from there. So how to find where our internal compass is pointing us to? How to find that true north? And there is a really good book about that called True North, highly recommend it. I believe that it is through the understanding of the meaning of the key events in our unique story. Each one of us has that unique story. That's what should be guiding us and helping us focus. That self-awareness will keep us moving in the right direction. By exploring different aspects of our character, our motivations, we can really develop that internal compass that will always point it in the right direction. Sometimes I think we steer away from having very honest, very hard conversations with ourselves about what is it that we truly want? Well, I believe it's all about our own values and the biggest drivers in our lives. So what was it for me, you may ask, that has driven my career from Poland through Portugal, South Korea, Australia, and a few other places? I was born in Poland during communist times, and during that time, not many people were allowed passports. I still remember little joys in life, like having a flavored yogurt on rare occasion. The food was rationed at that time and not everything was accessible. So it was probably not on my cards at that time to finish higher education across different continents, having experience of working across 7 different countries by the age of 30. I don't think that my parents were bold enough to dream that life for me at that time. And to be very honest with you, I don't think I could have ever imagined that that journey would unfold this way for me if you asked me earlier. So when people do ask me, and I get that question often, so how did it all start? I do go back to the island I grew up on. That's what you have circled on that map. And that island is a very interesting place because it was divided with a fence, defining the border between Germany and Poland. And, you know, that fence, I remember standing there and always being really curious about what was on the other side, how people live there on that other side of the fence. What could I learn from them? What was different? And that curiosity, that has never stopped for me. It leads me to this day. It always took over when in doubt about my next steps. It was the curiosity around unknown that was always driving my next steps on my journey. So you may ask how to recalibrate our true north when we feel like something's off. Our professional lives, they are very long, bumpy roads, and they do have a lot of unexpected twists and turns. The greatest thing about it is that we always have a choice. And that choice is to create our own unexpected, beautiful twists and turns. I ride motorcycles. I really love twisty roads. And this way we can create our own path. According to the latest predictions, in the future, we will be changing our careers 5 to 7 times in a lifetime. Career change is always a very daunting experience. I've had my fair share of changes and different experiences, from real estate to PR and communications, HR, marketing, and actually, like Alison mentioned, I am just starting a totally new chapter, again, this time running a partner business. I've changed markets and industries multiple times. I think that for someone looking at my resume and looking at the role lines in my CV, it might really look like an inconsequential series of events on that resume. But I know that every single experience I've ever had was a step on a journey, bringing me closer to my true life purpose. And then it was during my time in Japan, when I learned about this framework that can help us to think about it and to talk about it. And that's what I would like to share with you today. It's called Ikigai. It is a process of cultivating one's true inner potential, or in other words, what makes our life significant and unique. Iki and Gai. Iki refers to life, to being, and Kai could be translated to the realization of what one expects and hopes for. Japanese dictionaries define Ikigai in such terms as something to live for, the joy and goal of living, and the life worth living. So this concept taught me to look at my professional journey in terms of experiences. Ikigai is above all a way of living that strives to balance the spiritual side and the practical side. And this balance is found at the intersection where your passions and talents converge with the things that the world needs and the world is willing to pay for. So that Venn diagram that you see, all of those overlapping main qualities, what you're good at, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and of course, what you love. So boiling it down to the most basic, the crossover of all of those is what Ikigai stands for. So how to apply it to our lives, to our careers, our professional journeys? If you are feeling like something's off, it is a good exercise to gain awareness of what the current status of your life is. And you can use that diagram for that. So try to think about it as evaluating what you're spending your time on in your life recently. Look at the few months back at where you're spending most of your time and ask yourself a few basic questions like, is it something that I really love doing? Is it something that the world needs? Is it something that I'm really good at? And then, is it something that I'm getting paid for? So how could you add more of those things that are really important in your life to that equation? I know very well that change is scary, but small changes sometimes bring really impressive results. So it's not always about turning everything around. Sometimes small incremental changes can bring really incredible results. And meaningful life is not a destination. Meaningful life is something we can all enjoy right now. The way I learned to look at it in Japan is a little bit of joy every day is going to add up to a lifetime of joy. Simple, isn't it? So the last insight from my journey that I would like to share with you today is this short sentence I had written on my wall for quite some time. And this is actually another beautiful gift from one of my mentors. Always test the lead. It refers to an experiment involving fleas. You might want to try it at home. So in that experiment, a scientist placed a number of fleas in a jar. So they would obviously quickly jump out of the jar. He then put the fleas back into the jar and placed a lid over the top. The fleas began jumping and hitting the lid, falling back down in the jar. After a while, they become conditioned. So they become conditioned to the presence of that lid at the top. And they actually begin jumping slightly lower. They are aware of the lid and won't hit the lid. So what happens after a few days is that when you remove the lid, it's really not needed anymore to keep the fleas in the jar, because by that time, the fleas have learned to limit themselves from jumping beyond the height of the lid. So even the lid was removed, they've been conditioned to the fact of this being there and they won't escape from the jar. The interesting fact about this is that apparently that conditioning is also passed from generation to generation. So remember, always test the lead, because you might be able to jump much higher than you have ever imagined. And maybe the ceilings that you experienced yesterday, they are actually not there today. So to sum it up, when I look back at my own journey so far, here are the 3 principles that help me navigate my journey. Know your destination, follow your Ikigai, and always test the lead. Thank you.
And thank you, Olga. Thank you very much. I wanted to check and make sure we had a couple of questions, so let me pull them up. There's one question that came in actually from a message, and it's, all the choices that you've made. You've obviously had a very varied career. How did you make those choices, and which one would you say is the hardest?
Well, it is a difficult question to answer because every cross point, every crossroad is different. So we have different things to consider. But I'm actually looking for that fear factor. Yeah. And for me, I look at whether the opportunity ahead of me, whether it's something that scares me. And if it is, it's a good sign. I know that the stretch, the growth, the opportunity coming from it is something that will really help me grow. So I do look out for this sign, and that's how I navigate those crossroads.
And the question that I actually have is regarding Ikigai. Have you always felt that all of those kind of intersections have been a part of your career, or is that kind of when you need to make a change when they're not? Like, how do you use Ikigai to determine that?
I think in our lives, we live from day to day, and we live in a fast-paced world these days, and it's hard to find that time to really tune in with ourselves and where is it that we're going. And sometimes we set direction and just follow that direction, but at some point it might be good to check back in with ourselves on our journey, to see if what we do is still exactly what we would want to be doing, using that diagram and that principle of Ikigai. It actually just helps that evaluation. So thinking about it, like I said during the presentation, it's hard to sit down and think, oh, I'm just going to evaluate my life and think about all the things. It's hard to start. And having some kind of frameworks and ideas of where to start and what to think about just helps to ask ourselves the important questions. So I try to do it on kind of semi-regular basis from time to time. And like I said, it's not always about big changes. Sometimes we can just put intentional focus on some areas of our life and bring small incremental change that over time means a lot in terms of our life value or life purpose and how we feel about it.
Wow, well, that's great. I'm going to ask if there's any more questions. Those were the questions that were submitted. So I'll give it another minute, but otherwise, I just wanted to say thank you again for taking the time and presenting today, Olga. That first slide, always, I've seen you in rehearsal, and it touches my heart to see that and think of you, looking out that window. So, and congratulations on the new adventure you're on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending. We'll see you at the next session. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.